Welcome to this episode of Wanderlust Solo Women Travel Unscripted. Real women, real stories, real journeys, and no filter. Join Gina, your host, to share the experiences and stories of solo female travelers and advocates from all over the world, with a mission to empower women of all ages, backgrounds, and life stages to embrace solo female travel with confidence and enthusiasm, while being authentic and real, unscripted. Confronting the challenges and apprehensions many women face when considering solo adventures, providing inspiration to break through those barriers. Sharing how life transitions, loss, and trauma can lead to amazing experiences, rediscovery, and life journeys. The good, the bad, and the ugly of authentic and honest travel. So let's throw out the script, get comfy, and jump right into this episode.
This episode we welcome Kylie Feller. Kylie is a Level 3 Certified Internal Family Systems Counsellor, Akashic Records Coach, and Certified TRE Provider. Originally from British Columbia, Canada, Kylie is also a digital nomad who has lived and worked from places like Thailand, Bali, and Mexico. She works online guiding individuals and professionals in reconnecting their true self and supporting the journey from survival to thriving through IFS and nervous system regulation. She also teaches experimental IFS-based workshops and courses worldwide. Let's join Kylie in this next episode. Hello and welcome everybody to the show today, and we have Kylie joining us on Wanderlust Solo Women Travel Unscripted. It's so great to have you here, Kylie.
Thank you so much for having me, Gina. I'm really excited.
Yeah. And in your bio, I just explained briefly what you do. You do some really amazing techniques. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I'm a counselor, and my journey of being a counselor has a lot to do with my own healing of kind of my childhood trauma and really moving from like burnout into really living life, really thriving. So I help other people do that as well. So I have become certified in a model that really helped me heal my trauma and really helped me feel like really fully alive, which is internal family systems, which understands the mind as being made of multiple parts. Part of me wants to do this, part of me really wants to book this trip. Another part of me knows that I probably shouldn't, and I need to be careful of my finances. Another part says, you deserve this, you should go. And so we can recognize this like inner dialogue that we have always going on with decisions, like pros and cons, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, inner critics, perfectionist, procrastination. So in IFS, we see those as being kind of sub-personalities within us, and we can kind of turn inside and get to know these different parts of us. And every part of us has a positive intention. It's doing something to help us, even if it feels like it's really getting in the way. So parts of us can get stuck in the past and old survival strategies. And so IFS, instead of seeing us as being like broken or needing to be fixed, we really just need to be like witnessed and loved. And so IFS really helps us to do that so we can live in more like harmony with our decisions and how we feel about ourselves, a lot more compassion. So that's kind of what I do, is help people connect to their true selves. And I really help people get into the burnout out of survival mode. I do a somatic modality called TRE, or tension or trauma release exercises.
I want to delve into that more later on in the episode, because I think that will really help some of our listeners, because a lot of our listeners, they deal with anxieties and fears around travel and just in general with trying something new. So I think, touching on that later on in the episode will be really beneficial. But to start this conversation, we have our pass the parcel question, which is our signature question from a previous guest. So I just want to ask you this one. What have you discovered about yourself through travel experiences?
I think so much. I think one of the things I've loved about traveling is I grew up in a really small town, and when you grow up in a really small town, you kind of get seen as a particular person. I think when you're really young, you get put into a little bit of a box in whatever culture you kind of grew up in. And I started traveling when I was really young. I lived in Thailand for a year when I was 15. I got to redefine myself. I got to be around people who see me as me right now in this moment. And so as I've traveled, I get myself mirrored back by so many different people and so many different cultures. And it's really helped me kind of grow and I think really become more authentically me versus if I would have just stayed in one place my whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that authentically me, because I personally find that it's really funny. I have a day job which is quite male dominated, and then my passion job, which is this, and sharing travel experiences with women, and the feedback I get from the two dynamics is so polar opposite. So when I'm traveling, exactly what you said, that's when I feel my true authentic self. So I really love that. And diving into that, what you said about traveling when you were 15, you went off to Thailand at 15, which is a pretty big deal. I mean, for some people, just going to Thailand at any age is pretty scary, let alone packing up and going there to live like you did. Do you want to, share that story?
Yeah, I grew up in a really small town, like 200 people. There was 8 kids in my grad class, and I came across an opportunity. They said it on the PA, like, would you like to go live in another country for a year? I was like, absolutely, sign me up. And so, I was really academic when I was really younger, and I grew up in a town that wasn't very academic. Yeah, I just heard it and I was like, I got to do this. And I filled out the whole application and I got accepted before telling my parents. And I was like, can I go? And I was luckily a family friend helped me go. It's pretty affordable. Rotary will send kids internationally around the world, and you get hosted by different families. So it's quite affordable, but it was still a little bit for my family. But yeah, I was like, I got to do this. And it was the first time I really felt like myself when I got to go to Thailand and be with other Rotary students. And I went to a Thai high school, and I absolutely love Thailand. That's where I spent most of my winters traveling. And yeah, it was a really, really good experience. I know some kids can't do it. There's a lot of kids that struggled with Rotary with being away, but I loved it. And I think it planted that travel bug for me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, we have Rotary here in New Zealand. That's a real, and a lot of kids I went to school with went and did exchange programs the same. But you went from Canada to Thailand.
Yeah.
Which is quite different. So did you know anything about Thailand before you left? Like, did you have some knowledge of like what you were going to?
No, and actually Thailand was my last choice. So I thought I was going to go to South America because I wanted to learn Spanish. So like before I left, I took like grade 10 Spanish. I took salsa lessons. I did everything Spanish, and then like you can pick 5 countries that you'd be interested in. And my last country, my 5th country was Thailand. And then they're like, you're going to Thailand. I was like, I'm so grateful. I feel like the stars aligned. I feel like that's exactly where I was meant to go. Yeah, but that I had no idea. Like, I remember when I got there, my first time, I got off the plane and my host family's there waiting for me, and it's Bangkok. And they took me to this place. I didn't know anything. Like like bathrooms are completely different, cars are different. Like the whole culture is such a shock. And then we went for dim sum in the morning, and I grew up going for dim sum. That's something that I would do. And I was so excited to have something that was familiar. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, there's sticky rice. And my host dad was like, you can have sticky rice every single day if you want. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yeah, it's lovely.
That's so cool. And it obviously, Thailand was the right place for you, even though you didn't know it at the time. Which I think sometimes happens. We get called to these places, but we don't realize at the time why.
Yeah.
So it's not till you get there and then you find something. So where did that lead you to after that experience in Thailand?
Yeah, then I think I came home a little bit more me and had to finish high school. I knew when I was like quite young that I was going to become a counselor. So that led me to I kind of did my BA, I did my master's, and I knew also that I wanted to have my own private practice because I wanted to travel. And so while I was doing my undergrad and my master's, I did make some trips to Thailand. And then when I burned out when I was done my master's, like really badly. I had vertigo for about 1.5 years. I had full body hives for on and off for about 1 year. It was bad. And I just bought a one-way ticket to Bali with the plan to go to Thailand after. It's like as soon as I was done.
Sounds very cliche, but
I was just like, I gotta get. But what's happened is I had to pay for my master's, and it was really expensive. So I was working like 100 hours a week, and I knew something bad was going to happen. I just didn't know what. And then traveling now is like how I take care of myself. And so like I made it to that finish line, I think, of like doing like 10 years of school almost, knowing like I'll be able to like control my life soon, and I need to like get back to Thailand. I need to like get back to, it's a place I feel most at home where I can really nourish myself. The Western world, again, like I burnt out that in this Western world doing what I had to do, and then to go to a country that isn't like that
Yeah.
is so nourishing.
Yeah, do you want to like feel you really touched something you actually said there about the hives and the vertigo because this past year there are things I've been experiencing and the doctors aren't really any help. They sort of, especially because I'm older too, so everything gets lumped in the menopause bucket. But burnout is a real thing, and sometimes we are pressured in, especially I think as women, we're not only quite often, we have, I don't have a family, but women have families, they have careers, they often have side hustles. They're trying to hold all this shit together. And we don't recognize or we don't want to recognize the sign of burnout because we don't want to admit we can't cope is the other thing.
Yeah.
And I've found too that serendipitously that my travels have coincided when I need help. It's always been a time I just need to get to the end of this line, like you said, and that's so much how I feel. It is so much used as I use it as a wellness tool. So would you recommend people to use it that way as well?
Yeah, it has helped me. I always think there's this one part of me that's like, don't run from your problems. But honestly, changing your environment is really, really good for you. And I think one of the reasons I burnt out so bad is my nervous system was primed from previous trauma, which I think a lot of people's are sometimes, is they don't know how to rest. They don't know how to relax. When your worth gets tied in with your job and how much you succeed and how much you put in and the different roles that you play, like when you don't feel connected to yourself, when you feel numb, when you feel depressed, and then you push through. And I remember when I was younger and I would book these trips and I knew it was part of my healing, and I wished that I could feel more joy and more excitement for them. And I knew that one day I would. And I just like, it was a really big journey of learning like how to regulate my body and how to come back to myself. And I think a lot of people have a lot of traumatic experience. They might not even notice it, but if you grow up in a home where your parents aren't attuned to you emotionally, or they don't know how to regulate their emotions, certain emotions or feelings aren't allowed, where there is a lot of shame, you get disconnected from yourself. And I think that's why people are always trying to search for something. And traveling, I think, can help shake up the environment and the regular, but it's really important to also like look at the parts of us that might be running, the parts of us that don't feel like safe or connected to ourselves.
Yeah, and I really agree that, I think, in my past, people have probably seen my travels as me distancing myself from my issues or my problems. I haven't seen it. Like, I don't feel like I'm running away from stuff. I've always used it as a time for clarity, like to get my head together, because sometimes the old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees, and removing yourself. And it doesn't have to be, like to another country, but it's just removing yourself from that environment so you can see and let your body have time to acknowledge what's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like it has helped me so much get that like clarity and that perspective. And so I guess I'm bringing it because there's like, I think in our culture where we see it as like escape, but if you ask anybody that does it, that like prioritizes taking the trips and like reflecting or just stepping away, I don't know the research on it, but I imagine you'll notice that they feel more connected to themselves, that they've been able to take a better perspective of their lives, that like we can get so caught up in it. I think I meet a lot of people that think, oh, I don't have the money for that, or I can't. And I get it is really tough right now, I think, financially. Like for a long time when I was younger, like I don't promote this for people, but it worked for me. But for a long time, like while I was in my career, I didn't have money to travel, but I needed it. Like it was part of, like, I don't think I could have gotten through what I was doing without it. And I would book it on my line of credit or my credit card. And then I would come home and I would slowly pay it off. And then I would do it again. never like I'm not promoting going into big
No,
debt for it, but if I didn't do that, like I don't know, I wouldn't have been able to do I think what I've done, and like I still had major consequences, but it was just it's so important for me and my health.
it's funny you say that because again, I'm not a luxury traveler by any means.
Mhm,
And I was actually telling this story to someone else. I had a work colleague, and I had to take him home one evening. This is a few years back now. And I was low on gas. And I
mhm,
said, oh, geez, I'll get you home. And he said, well, why
mhm,
don't you just, I said, I only put so much in every week. And he goes, well,
mhm,
why don't you fill your tank up? And I said, because I can't afford it. And
mhm,
then he turned around and said to me, oh, but you go on holiday all the time.
mhm.
Priorities. And I was like, that, but you know, I had enough gas to get to work every week and all that, but
Yeah, you're like,
my
I'm driving you home
priority
and I'm going on a holiday.
exactly.
I'm doing both. I did prioritize.
So, you know, I'd use what resources I could
Mhm.
to facilitate my travels. You know, I quite often,
Yeah.
like you, would go to Thailand, Southeast Asia, because it is cheaper.
Mhm.
So your dollar
Yeah.
goes a lot further. So you make choices around what you can facilitate and afford as well. But like you said, I
Mhm.
needed that. I needed that
Mhm.
every year because I'd
Mhm.
go away for like 5 weeks at a time.
Mhm. Me
And oh
too.
my God, I needed that end line.
Mhm.
And if I didn't have it, yeah, I can totally relate. And what you touched on earlier, I think too, about trauma. And you
Mhm.
know, there's so many people that have fears and anxieties that hold them back. You know,
Mhm.
so you were talking about that being based in trauma. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I think, from an IFS lens, it's a trauma approach. Like everything comes from that. And trauma is more like a wound. There's something that we experience that disconnected from us from ourselves, or we lost trust kind of in ourselves or in the world. And when we're younger, we have to do that. And I think when we don't feel connected to ourselves, when I don't trust that whatever I go through in life, whatever I experience, whatever comes at me, I can handle it, I can hold it, I can feel it. When we don't have that ability, our world can get quite small. And I talk to a lot of people that are like, I could never go traveling alone. And they're like, oh, well, like I get so curious, like, why not? And I think one thing that people tell me a lot is like, I don't want to feel alone. And it's such an interesting because I feel the least alone when I'm traveling alone. And especially in Thailand, I could have friends in an instant if I wanted them. But a lot of time I just really enjoy my own space and interacting with like the locals and there's people around. But I think these burdens of like not trusting ourselves, not trusting the world, feeling really alone, those are a lot of wounds that I think people carry, or not trusting oneself, that can hold oneself back from really kind of stepping into what we really want.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
what are your tips like to try and break through those barriers of starting to trust yourself and, know that you are capable?
Yeah. Well, IFS is fantastic. So instead of like, looking at, if you've got a lot of anxiety, get curious about it. Like what, if you start getting, instead of like, oh, I just couldn't, or I couldn't do that, or I really want to do that, but oh, I can't afford that, or I can't, like, to actually start getting curious about the like beliefs that we're holding and the like boundaries that we're putting around ourselves, because we create our reality. The beliefs that you have create your reality, because we all have different beliefs. We all have the ability to create different realities. When you travel, you really see that how different beliefs create these different cultures that are so different than ours. And so getting curious, like, what am I afraid would happen if I went and traveled, and then what? And then what would happen? And that would be so bad about that, because sometimes we fall into like the worst case and then we don't keep going, or like really looking at it with curiosity of like, would that really happen? And then maybe if that happened, what would happen? Like playing it all the way out. And if you are struggling with a lot of anxiety, like getting some support. There's lots of books, there's lots of counselors. Like you could do self-study if you wanted to do it. You could have somebody support you as well.
Yeah, and what you also touched on about people worrying about being alone, I've found this
Mhm,
really interesting. I'm with a partner now, and we have traveled
mhm,
together. I actually make more friends
mhm,
when I'm not with them. And
mhm,
when I was traveling solo, like you said, I could
mhm.
make friends in an instant.
Yeah.
I found a lot of that is also where you stay. I even later in life, in my 50s, I'm 54 very soon. I still stayed in hostels or bed and breakfast or environments where there's more like-minded people around, and I think that's really important because the times that I have stayed in, like, I've treated myself to a really nice hotel. I've tended not to meet anyone. So it's also about how you organize that experience. But I've met some of my best friends solo traveling. Would you find that the same?
Yeah. And again, like when I was younger, I used to stay in a lot of like hostels. Like I could stay like in a nice hostel for like $5, $7 a night. I know Thailand's gotten more expensive now. And I would meet somebody, we'd click, like, and we'd start traveling together. And then, you can be together or not. Like there's always somebody kind of traveling around. And now that I'm older and have a little bit more financial stability and I don't want to be alone, I often will go and stay at a fitness retreat or a yoga retreat, or I'll stay really close to a place like that. I really enjoy fitness now that I don't like to party as much. I still want to be around a community. And so I'll just do that and I'll just join. And there's people from traveling all over the world. And so I have a bunch of people I can hang out with every single day if I want to, that have similar values and interests as me, or I can be alone, which I really like too.
Yeah, and I think having that balance, like I've done things like I've organised, I arrive somewhere, so I always do a free walking tour in a city because that's a great way to orientate yourself, but also meet people. I've usually met people and they go, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And quite often I'll join either a small group tour or, like you said, a retreat. It even can be just a weekend retreat. It doesn't have to be a long one. And then build in free time by myself as well.
Yeah.
That way, and when I did Europe back in 2011, so I was just turned 50, I actually did a thing called Bus About. So basically hop on, hop off bus around Europe. But because other people were doing the same, it tended that the same people were staying in the same, places.
Areas,
So you ended up making your own community anyway. And I've just made some amazing connections and friends that way. And that's been, an amazing thing through travel that I've found. And diversity of people as well. Been really cool.
Yeah, and that's that kind of coming back to, I think, like how I get to see myself through like these new friendships and these new connections, and it brings out different parts inside of you as well. And I think it can be really fun and a really beautiful learning experience.
What would be your top tips for someone who is feeling a little bit anxious about, going out there maybe for the first time solo traveling? What would you say to them?
There's a lot. Yeah, I think like if you really want it, if you really want this, do it. Because we design our own lives. So if something's calling you, especially when it's calling you, like that pull to a place, I find that there's usually something special waiting for you there. And so if we can like sit with the parts of us that have the anxiety and fears and let them know, I've got you, we're going to be okay, and doing whatever kind of safety planning you need to do around that, you're never really alone. And, you can always get on a plane. My little brother actually just went to Europe by himself, his first big trip. And he said on the way there, the whole way there, he's like, I'm just going to stay a month and then I'm going to go back. And he actually ended up staying 6 months abroad. But he told himself that I can go home whenever I want. I can go home whenever I want. And I'll tell myself that sometimes too. If you don't like it there, or if there's nothing there for you, just go home. But there might be something super magical and absolutely amazing waiting for you there. So, why not go check it out?
I love that. That's so cool. And you've, like you said, designing your life. You have designed your life. You've become a digital nomad. Are there tips you can tell someone to start making those steps to create that freedom for themselves?
Yeah, and we live in a wonderful, I think that's one of the silver linings from COVID is there's a lot more remote positions, or that started to become more open for some places. And if that's something that you want, some of my clients I work with that are, graduating and think about their career, I'm like, do you like having that freedom? Do you want that freedom? Then go for a job that you can have the freedom in, and you can travel if you want to. And, I used to stay, another thing is I go to co-working places often. So if I don't want to be alone as well, and that they were really big in Bali, that's why I used to go there. And now they're really popping up in lots of other countries. And so many of the people there were just working as like assistants online or social media managers, or like, there's just so many, like, if you don't have a certificate or a training, but you know how to post on social media, like there's so many different jobs and like data analysis, like things that you can do online that can kind of fund you while you travel if you would like that.
Yeah, and I did that. I mean, this is again back in 2011, and I wasn't so much digital, but when I went to the UK, I was very lucky. I had a dual passport, but I was a live-in carer. There's and I did woofing and work away. So there's options if you really want it to make it happen. You just got to, like you said, have that decision and then start working backwards. How are you going to make it happen?
Yeah. And if you don't know, like, there's lots of people that do know. There's usually like career counselors. There's like people that you can like talk to or Google, different options like woofing. Like there's lots of options if that's what's in your heart and that's what you want.
Yeah.
I think do it and, go after what you want. Like, we just have this life. So why not make it more magical?
I love that. And on that note, I just want to go into our quickfire round because I just think that's a magical way to sort of start winding down the episode. So I'm just going to ask you a few quickfire questions and just, don't overthink them. Just come to whatever comes to you first. This is actually probably quite a good one for you. Has travel affected your self-esteem and confidence?
Yes, it's definitely increased my self-esteem and my confidence. Like my friends are actually going to come to Thailand with me this year. A bunch of them, because they're like, Kylie will be able to like do everything. I'm like, yes, I can do it all. Like it is. Don't worry.
Oh, that's so funny. Here's a little bit. If you have room buddies, are you a snorer, light sleeper, or out like a light?
Light sleeper. That's why I usually book my own room now. When I was younger, it was better.
Favorite travel app?
Favorite travel app? Well, when I'm in Thailand, I use Grab a lot, which just I can get like food delivered. It's like almost like, I think it was like meal planning. It's like I just like go on and like order my meals, and I get like these beautiful Thai meals.
They have Gojek Grab in Bali, and it's in Singapore and most of Southeast Asia, and you can have anything delivered.
Yeah. Food, and they take you out. The other one, my newer one that I really love, if anyone's going to Thailand, I think it's in other countries too, is called Go Wabi. And Go Wabi, and like it's all of the spa stuff on like major discounts, and so they have like these like flash sales, so it's like advertising because it's such a competitive market in Thailand, so you can get some crazy deals on like facials or even like medical spa stuff from the Go Wabi app, like head spas, everything.
Here's a funny one. If you have a curse word, what's your favorite curse word?
Curse word.
A bit of a naughty one.
Yeah. I think I don't realize I swear a lot, except for when I used to hang out with my aunt and her kids were younger. She'd be like, Kylie, you have to stop swearing. And I think I do say fuck a lot, but I don't realize it. Like, I don't have any awareness except for when I hang out with family with younger children. And then I'm like, oh gosh. So yeah, I think that's probably one of them.
I used to do that around my parents. Like, I never swore around my parents at all. And then when I started working in a male environment, I found myself swearing so much more, and now I really catch myself because I swear real badly, and I've got to remember not to sometimes.
Yes, I still have no conscious awareness. Other people have to tell me, and I'm like, I didn't know I talk like a sailor. I had no idea.
I love it. And so we'll go into our signature question for the next guest coming on. What question would you like to ask them?
Yeah, I think, through traveling, is there a part of you that you have rediscovered or reconnected with that you might have felt like you had lost?
I love that. That's such cool. And if people want to find you, where's the best place to? We'll put the links down below, but can you just tell people where to find you as well?
Yeah, my website, it's just my name, KylieFeller.com. That's got a lot of links. My Instagram, I'm on there a little bit. It's Kylie Feller IFS. So, and then my email is just info@KylieFeller.com.
And where's your next adventure to? When are you back off to Thailand?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly when I'll go there, but for sure I have to be there for the 15th in December, but I'm going to Denver at the end of the month to see some friends and do a training there, and then I've got Mexico in yeah, and lots of little when I'm here in Canada and like British Columbia, I like to travel a lot through BC and visit friends and family, and it's super beautiful. So I do a lot of local kind of travel here as well in the summer.
And just before we do head off, I think that's a really good point. You don't have to go overseas. I know you just mentioned while we're chatting before the recording that you're actually going on a staycation.
Yes, so I'm going to a really nice resort that's like an hour away, but it feels like it's called Sparkling Hills. It's in Vernon, British Columbia, Canada. And it's like you're going to this European resort. The whole thing is built like kind of out of glass and it looks like a diamond. And then there's Swarovski crystals everywhere inside of it. And then 7 saunas with different themes, like a rose sauna, and then a beautiful infinity pool over the lake and the mountains.
Please enjoy.
Thank you.
And a lot of R&R. I just want to thank you again, Kylie. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Gina. It's been lovely chatting and sharing.
Awesome. So remember, everyone, to stay tuned. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, it's never too late to unleash your wanderlust.
Perfect.
Thanks for listening. Please share the love by liking, commenting, or subscribing, or join us in our Facebook community.